Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Zimbabwe is a failed state, and all the hallmarks of a failed state are there. An economy in total meltdown, infrastructure that is in various stages of rot and decay, power cuts, basic services like water are not available, and a restless nation. But as the guests arrive in about 2 weeks' time for the Sadak Summit, this is the road they're going to drive down, and you can see it's flagged with flags and so forth, to give the impression that Zimbabwe is doing very well. There is rumor that the drivers who have been deployed to ferry the visitors around have been given instructions that they must follow designated routes. In other words, those roads that have been repainted and potholes covered up, so that the visitors will get the impression that Zimbabwe's roads, this is the real state of Zimbabwe's roads. Whereas in reality, the situation is totally different. Here's a short video clip of the road from Harare to Chirundu. This is one of the main arteries of the country, and yet it's in such a sorry state, you can't believe it. Just show a short clip of it. I don't know whether you, Benjamin, have ever driven down that road soon after independence. It used to be in the same condition as the road we are seeing here. You know, proper, okay, it was 2-lane, but nonetheless, it was well maintained. Now I can't believe the potholes.
Oh yes. Good evening to everybody. Yes, I went down that road. I was going to Kariba, actually, to do some fishing with friends. It wasn't like that, If you were to, if you were to show me and you didn't actually tell me that, this was the highway to Chirundu border post, I would have thought probably it's one of those, roads, that go to probably, small growth points or, rural area roads. It's surprising that such a highway, that's a very busy road, right? It connects two countries actually, and it's pretty embarrassing and sorry at the same time, where just when you cross over the border, you're obviously going to have, a nice road, and then when you come back to our end, it's so dilapidated to that stage. Sometimes you just wonder how do people actually run down, until it gets to that sorry state, which just brings us to the road that you were talking about, the designated roads that the SADC delegates are going to be using. You know, it, People can tell this is a new road, and I believe, with social media, Zimbabwe is known all over for potholes. I've heard, ministers in South African ministers laughing at our roads, and they've used us as an example. So it's not something that people do not know, that Zimbabwe roads or Zimbabwe's economy is is in a is in a meltdown, or it's dilapidated. People do know. All the delegates that are coming, they do know. It's You can try as much as you want to cover up. Like I said, these days, the social media, people post these things. All you just got to go and just click, even on Facebook, say Zimbabwean roads. They will show you how it is. So, you can try as much as you want to cover up. You know, the world knows how Zimbabwe is. I'll give you an example. One lecture of mine years back, when I was in school, uh, uh, here in Canada, they had that bearer check. You know, I'm not sure the denomination exactly, but it was in the trillions. And he was fascinated to say, "How did you use this money?" And I was telling him it's useless. It was useless. You couldn't buy anything. So you can see how far news uh, you know travels, how far people get to know about different countries. Now the world is a global village. You should expect that. All this here is just a cover up for them to believe, not for the visitors to believe or to know. They know already.
Well, this is another photograph showing the new road going from Harare to Mount Hampton, where the new parliament structure is. I believe this is also where the villas for some of the visitors are. So they'll be driving up and down from wherever the conference, the Sadak Summit, is going to be held, up and down that dual carriageway with palm trees going down the middle. Looks impressive. And this is where this instructions comes in, where designated drivers are instructed that they must use only the designated roads. Because next to that picture, this is one of the main roads into Chitungwiza or some of these other big suburbs in Harare, and you can see the condition of that road. It's no different. In fact, it's a lot worse than the Chirundu video we've just seen. Years of neglect have resulted in potholes. When you go into the smaller roads in the suburbs, particularly the high density suburb, the tarmac that was installed by the whites before independence has all but disappeared. That's the sorry state of the roads. So we have got a situation here where we have got a regime that is trying to give the impression that Zimbabwe is a thriving nation, when in reality it is not. And by the way, in that picture on the left there is an army truck. The regime has deployed the army, the police, and the dreaded CIO. And they've been rounding up everybody who is suspected could hold demonstrations during the SADC. And this is a video of the deployment. The deployment has happened not only in Harare, but in all the country's major cities. What is it that the regime is scared of? Well, ZANU-PF rigged last year's election, and that point cannot be denied. Sadak and the AU condemned last year's election as flawed and illegal. And per se, Mnangagwa is illegitimate. And of course, there's no doubt some of the demonstrators or protesters would be holding placards proclaiming that Mnangagwa is illegitimate, reminding the SADC leaders that Mnangagwa is illegitimate. And that is the bone of contention. Mnangagwa does not want the SADC leaders to be reminded that he is illegitimate. That is what this is all about. Of course, he had to rig the elections because, as I've shown you there, the economy is in a sorry state. Basic infrastructure has been neglected for decades. And therefore, you can be certain that if Zimbabweans were given the opportunity to have free, fair, and credible elections, they certainly would not have voted for ZANU-PF. So the regime rigged the elections. And meanwhile, Mnangagwa himself maintains that the elections were free, fair, and credible, which doesn't make any sense at all. Here is Mnangagwa insisting that the elections were free, fair, and credible.
Ukavona vavengi vakwashi kurumbidzwa nekuchikanganisa, ukavona vachiti ZANU-PF yakaipa, farai, because you are doing correct things for your country. Hongu takaita maelections edu, kuna vamwe vaitaura zvisina musoro zvikanzi maelections anofamba zvakanaka, ndezvavo.
To be dismissing the rigged elections as deja vu is one of the most arrogant statements he could possibly make, particularly in the face of the coming SADC heads of state, because they also read the Sadak report, which condemned those elections as flawed and illegitimate. So he's giving the middle finger to his SADC fellow leaders that the elections were free, fair, and credible, when they all acknowledged that they were not. That is the problem that we are having in Zimbabwe. Sorry about that, Benjamin. I noticed you dropped out.
Yes, I'd lost connection. Sorry about that to our viewers. I came in and I saw you playing a video of Mnangagwa, saying he doesn't really care about what people have to say about the party, his party ZANU-PF, and whatever they are doing. I mean, you got a guy that is his characteristic is that of a narcissist person, somebody that just thinks of me and I am right, and I don't care whatever you say, whether it be good, bad, or ugly. Somebody that cannot be told, cannot be advised, and they believe even in the most absurd things. I mean, I know he got handed over the Sadak report. We know that he went for extraordinary meetings and he came out sweating. We all saw that. There was something visibly wrong with him. But you are dealing with somebody that really is just beyond redemption, beyond help. This is a sign to show that ZANU-PF now is beyond help. Everybody in there has just basically they have a seared conscience. They just don't care, and they will do anything just to have their own way. They would burn the country down just to have their own way, which is quite sad.
The Sadak report was very clear that Zimbabwe had failed to follow its own electoral act, the Zimbabwe constitution, and the Sadak guidelines on free, fair, and credible elections. So the issue of Mnangagwa being illegitimate is understood by all. And therefore, then all this is just time wasting in many respects, trying to deny that the elections or pretend that the elections were free, fair, and credible. It is little wonder that most Zimbabweans are now viewing Mnangagwa as nothing more than a hyena that has been caught with his face still blood red from the feasting, and yet claims that it is innocent. It has not attacked anybody. It has not eaten anything. I think Sadak leaders must realize that Zimbabwe is a serious problem. And they must realize that the sooner Zimbabwe's economic and political crisis is sorted, the better it will be for the whole region. There's no doubt that the 20 years plus of serious economic meltdown in Zimbabwe and political repression have caused a lot of suffering of Zimbabweans themselves, and has caused a lot of disruption within SADC region, particularly South Africa and Botswana, who have been found themselves having to host a lot of Zimbabweans. The Zimbabwe problem has got to be resolved. And I think there comes a time when SADC leaders have to put their foot down and take the regime on. The amount of political repression following this Sadak Summit is such that some of the leaders must seriously consider boycotting the summit. Because as long as they come to participate, the regime will use that as proof that it has been accepted by the regional body and given legitimacy. And therefore then is likely to be even more arrogant. I think it will be important for some of them, particularly if the arrests and harassment of the opposition and human rights activists continue at the rate at which the regime has kicked off. It's another 2 weeks or so before the SADC meeting, and already we have seen the deployment of the police, the army, and the dreaded CIO. God knows what havoc they'll cause. Hundreds have been sent to prison, and some of them were tortured before they were finally sent to prison, and they've been denied bail. The right to demonstrate, to hold peaceful protests, must be regarded as a fundamental democratic right. And therefore then the regime must be condemned for its brutal oppression and determination to silence the opposition. Thank you very much. Ben, do you want to give your closing remark?
Yes, in closing, I would like to say, we should remember we are dealing with a regime that really doesn't care about us, the citizens of Zimbabwe. I mean, look, if you look I was reading in the Herald today, they were saying that, as Zimbabwe, we have arrested people that would want to, cause havoc. Look, for example, in the UK, they've arrested over 500 people. We have just arrested 100. So, there is no difference there. How can now the British government be condemning us when they are doing the exact same thing? So you have a regime that, will do anything, they're not worried, really, who gets hurt, who gets killed in the process, as long as they have their own way. So I think with that statement, we can safely say, they have just given themselves a green light to kill, to hurt people, because of a demonstration that happened elsewhere, and they do not want any retribution because they believe that others are doing it. So they have a justified cause to now crack the whip on demonstrations. So, and I do agree with you to say, SADC, they should be, principled enough to say, look, I mean, you have people that are languishing in prison for a crime that does not even exist. How then do you come and wine and dine with such a person that is doing such a thing? I think that is where SADC should also draw the line, and I do agree with you. They really do need to draw a line on that, to say, you know what, we cannot be seen with you, lest our image as well gets damaged, because definitely SADC's image is getting damaged by associating, and on top by crowning, right? So it's something that we will have to see in the couple of days, how SADC will proceed in such a very, very harsh environment in Zimbabwe. So I just hope everything will be peaceful in the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Benjamin, and the listeners were able to join us tonight. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a good day.